Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of the 5-day first chapter challenge. If you are just joining us right now, make sure that you go back and watch day 0 first, because that is where you can download the homework and actually do these activities with us. We are working on developing our first chapter, and today we are looking at our character entrances. And I do want to make a quick distinction. We do have a 5-day character development challenge, which is all about developing the characters. This one isn't so much about building who they are. You can go take that one if you want to do that part. This one is more about how we introduce them, and it's also about making sure that they have the best possible entrance into the storyline. So today's going to be a lot of fun as we determine what our character's first appearance in the story really looks like and how we're going to portray that in the best way possible. And if you guys are ready to dive in and get started, then go ahead and grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Alright guys, so today is about strong character entrances, which really is about developing some sort of connection between the reader and the character so that A, they care about them, and B, they actually remember who that character is as we move into chapter 2. But guys, characters are one of the most important things that we need to get right in this beginning, because if we make it all the way through the first chapter and your reader does not care about the character, it's really tough for them to want to go on to chapter 2. And so we're going to talk today about how we can develop that relationship between the reader and the character where they feel something for them and want something for them. And then we're also going to talk about if it's possible that your characters aren't playing a super strong role in this first chapter, if maybe they don't need to be in it. So we're going to take a look at quite a few things today. And you know what, actually, we're just going to jump straight to the homework so that we can just start using these as kind of our talking points. Because what we're going to be doing is examining each character in this opening chapter and really taking a look at the role that they're playing and making sure that it's good. And making sure that it's setting us up for success in hooking our readers and keeping them around so that they don't put the book down at the end of chapter 1. Especially when readers are giving a new author a chance and they've never read a book by them before. That first chapter is really like your trial run. A lot of times they haven't even bought the book yet. They've got that peek inside where they can read the first chapter and see if they like it and then decide whether they want to buy the book or not. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in to the very first question that is on your homework. Again, if you don't have these worksheets, you want to go back and watch day 0, that has the worksheets for you to download on it. But our first question is, how is this character directly relevant to the opening of the story? And this is the part where I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback, because you guys are going to say, oh, well, they're important later. I've got to introduce them now because they play a big role in the story later. But I really want you guys, when you're going through the homework and looking at this first question, to ask yourself, what is their role now? Because if you're thinking ahead like that of why they're important later and what's going to be super cool about them later, it's possible that they're not really playing a very good role right now. And with this chapter being like that trial chapter where you're trying to hook the readers, we can't afford to have characters in it who aren't playing a strong role. We can't just toss them in because they're important later. They have to make your reader feel something now. They need to be helping to build the story in the now. They need to be helping to move that plot forward, or move us at least towards the inciting incident, and they have to be doing it right now. Even if they are super awesome later, that does not justify them playing a weak role in the first chapter just because we're trying to get them in there. So as you ask yourself this question, how is the character directly relevant to the opening of the story? I want you to put in the answer, what are they doing in the first chapter that's important? And that can be that they're critical to introducing what the plot is, or maybe they are a critical element to the story itself. If they are part of the relationship in the very beginning that's going to get broken up during the inciting incident and set the character on a new plot, then that's relevant. Or they can be a character who invokes strong emotion in the reader. So either they're super funny and you have your reader in stitches, or they're in a really tough situation and so your reader feels for them. You know, if the character is struggling in a career field that they absolutely hate, and part of the story is that there's going to be an inciting incident that sets them on a quest to find a new career or build a new, better them, then that character is definitely relevant to the opening of the story. Now, the next thing that we want to ask ourselves is, what will your reader remember about this character after this chapter alone? So this goes back to, we need to not focus on what's happening later, what's coming up. We need to focus on right now. What is your reader going to remember about this character after this one chapter is over? You know, is there something quirky about them? Did they dress weird? Did they seem super wise? Did they do something heroic or really helpful? Did they put themselves in harm's way? We have to come up with something about this character that is memorable so that we don't just meet them in chapter 1 and immediately lose them and forget who they are. Because if they're so forgettable that we make it to chapter 2 and can't remember who that one character was, they probably didn't need to be in chapter 1. And then the next question is, what emotion do you want your reader to feel toward this character? So this really goes with the last one of what are we going to remember about them? The strongest connection that we can form between the reader and that character is an emotional connection. That can be us feeling terrible for the character because we get to see them in a really bad relationship and we want them to leave that relationship, or maybe we want them to fix that relationship. We can also develop really positive feelings for our characters in that first chapter. If we see two characters who are just super fun to read about and we love that relationship, then we want to see more of it. We want to see maybe that relationship progress into something more, or we want to see them go on an adventure and accomplish something together. One of the really important parts about determining what emotion you want your reader to feel towards the character is that that emotion should make the reader want something. So if you're feeling empathy for a really tough situation that that character's in, you want a remedy for it. Or if you're feeling positively towards whatever it is you're reading about, if it's a character who's super funny and has you laughing out loud and you develop that positive emotion toward them, then you want to see more of them. You want them to be able to deliver hilarious lines to the character who is sad so that maybe we can get that character to laugh. The important part of invoking emotion is that it should make your reader want something. And then our next question is directly related, which is how will you build that emotion in the strongest way possible? So with this, I actually want to steal kind of an example that I used in the 60-day novel writing challenge. So you guys may have already heard this, but if not, this is one of my best pieces of advice for invoking emotion in your readers. And that is to look at it in kind of 3 different tiers. The very bottom amateur hour tier is just telling the reader that your character is having an emotion. So just saying Charlie is feeling depressed, or Charlie is having a blast, he's having a great time, or Charlie is laughing out loud. That is probably the worst way we could ever try to convey emotion to our readers. So then the next step up is better, which is showing that emotion instead of telling. So bottom was telling. The next one up is actually showing, which is where instead of just saying that Charlie is depressed, we show him not getting out of bed. We show him not wanting to eat any food. His friends call and he lets the phone go to voicemail. He just doesn't care. Like the drapes are pulled closed so the room is dark. That is a really good example of showing. But I want you guys to ask yourself, after all of that description that I just gave you, are you actually feeling a really strong emotional connection? Maybe a little bit. You know, for people who have had personal experiences with that, it can invoke their own emotion of reminding them of a time when life was like that for them. But in order to invoke emotion in all readers across the board, regardless of what personal experiences they have, the best thing that we can do is to give them the emotion. So what I mean is whatever caused the character to get into that state, whatever events led up to that, we need to put the reader through them so that they feel the character's pain. They're not just hearing about it as we tell them. They're not just seeing it as we show them. They're feeling it because they went through that character's experience. And if we want to go with a sad emotion like that, it would be something like giving the reader something that they care about and then taking it away. Whatever it is that caused that sadness in the character, you need to give the reader that experience. And one of the best examples that I could give you that does this immensely well is the opening scene of Up. And if you haven't seen it, go Google it after this. But it does the best job ever of conveying to you that character's sadness because you get to see the dreams that he shared with the wife that he had and then ended up eventually losing. It's actually an incredible emotional experience and all in such a short amount of time. But it's also what I would really consider that top tier of conveying emotion to your readers. So remember, bottom tier is telling, middle tier is showing, top tier is giving the reader that experience. So the example that I use in the 60-day novel writing challenge is about laughing. We can say that Sally laughed, or we can show her on the ground in stitches. She can barely breathe. She's laughing so hard. She's just having the best time ever. Or we can actually tell a joke that is so funny that the reader laughs. And then as Sally is laughing, the reader is laughing too. And that is the best way to really get emotion across to your reader. You know, once we determine what emotion we want the reader to feel toward that character, I want you to think about how we're going to make the reader feel that and not tell it, not show it, but give the reader the experience that will make them feel a certain way toward that character. So then the very last prompt on here is just to examine what you have about the characters already and try to brainstorm 3 ways that you could make your readers care about them even more. That could be through giving them an even stronger personality. That could be through developing an even stronger emotional connection with them. That could be through giving them a much more critical, crucial role in the plot that starts right off the bat so that we know that they're important and we have to have them in the story. The story cannot go on without them. So I really want you guys to think about 3 ways that you could make your readers care more. So before we jump into doing the homework, I just want to reiterate the thing that I really want you guys to remember after coming away from this today is that reader character connection is one of the most important things that you can do to make sure your reader doesn't put the book down after the first chapter. If they feel something for the characters, like a real actual emotion, then they know, they have that promise that the rest of the book is going to give them real actual emotions too. And that is why we read. You know, even the guys who say that they don't care about emotion and they're just reading this shoot 'em up thriller because it's got blood and whatever, they still do too, because they're in it for the suspense and they're in it for that action, that edge of the seat driving plot line that has them guessing what's gonna happen and who's gonna die. You guys can't tell me that we're not all in it for the emotion. That is what we read for. And so you want to get as much of it into that first chapter as you can, because it's like a promise to the reader that that is what the rest of the book is going to be filled with. And then on my avoid list, the thing that I want you guys to take a look at is avoiding having too many characters in this opening scene. Because something to think about is that this first chapter has limited resources, right? We only get to put so many words in there. If we're trying to hook that reader in our short and sweet first chapter, then if we have 2 characters who are basically like half a character each, like one is explaining what the plot is and the other one is funny or has a personality, why couldn't we just have one who does both? Why couldn't we have one character who's full of personality and is explaining the plot? Because if we do it that way, that character becomes more memorable, they become more crucial to the story. If we have one character who we really enjoy because they're funny and they're critical to the plot, then we have that promise that we know they're going to be in the book a whole lot coming up because they are very important to what is going on in the story, but we also know that we enjoy them. So what I want to try to avoid is having too many characters in this opening, because then you end up splitting the roles among them. You know, if you introduce 7 new characters in this opening chapter, you have to somehow build all of them to be memorable and to be somebody that your reader's really excited about. So maybe focus on just doing a few of them super well and see if you really need all of the rest of them in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump off and do this with my own characters. I'm pretty excited about taking a look at all of them and seeing if there's a few I could combine or if they're all really necessary, because I think there might actually be a few that I could combine now that I'm thinking about it. So thank you so much for being here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys tomorrow for day 3 of the 5-day first chapter challenge.